Modern people have put enormous effort into learning how to look for relationships, and in the process have lost, almost completely, the ability to simply be with themselves. How to Be Single might look like a standard romantic comedy on the surface, but underneath, it's a serious study of existential emptiness. Nearly every character here is trying to fill an inner silence through external constructions. Sex, career, rigid control, or the attempt to force life into a perfect script. The paradox is that none of them know how to simply exist without reaching for constant stimulation from outside. And the right place to start isn't with the characters, it's with the space they inhabit. New York in this film is not just a beautiful backdrop, it's a psychological condition in its own right. In some sense, it's a metaphor for the contemporary psyche, a place where contact has become infinite and genuine closeness has become scarce. The city offers millions of people within arm's reach, round-the-clock parties, and a relentless noise that is perfectly calibrated to drown out any inner voice. We watch characters who are constantly surrounded by people, and yet virtually none of them can tolerate solitude without immediately filling it with something. The moment a pause opens up, it gets stuffed with work, casual hookups, or fantasies about the future, which is exactly why the title lands the way it does. The film isn't offering a tutorial on how to find love. It's asking something far more uncomfortable. What is left of a person when there are no relationships? Who are you when there's no one around to reflect your significance back at you? Alice is the emotional center of this story, precisely because she has almost no stable sense of who she is. Throughout the film, we watch her literally flow from one state to the next, existing entirely through the prism of her relationships, first through her boyfriend, then through a forced attempt to learn how to be alone, and then again through the search for a new anchor in a new man. Alice's problem isn't simply love addiction. It goes deeper. She has a pathological inability to know who she is unless she can see her own significance reflected in someone else's eyes. From the perspective of self-concept psychology, Alice has an extremely diffuse personality structure. She doesn't live so much as she auditions identities, cycling through them like clothes in a fitting room. First, she's the girl in a serious relationship, then the carefree party girl, then she tries on Robin's lifestyle, then attempts to construct herself as the independent woman. In every role, she's visibly lost, because she isn't searching for herself, she's searching for the correct version of how she should look from the outside. This is where we encounter the core existential terror, the void. The moment her familiar partner disappears from her life, Alice is left, perhaps for the first time, in complete silence, and that silence frightens her. The film captures something important here. An enormous number of people pursue closeness not because they want love, but because they genuinely cannot bear their own company. Relationships, for them, are a way of never having to meet themselves. In this dynamic, Robin functions as Alice's classic Jungian shadow. Robin embodies everything Alice suppresses in herself: spontaneity, raw sexuality, impulsiveness, and most crucially, the right to be disliked and to live without anyone's approval. Alice is simultaneously drawn to her friend and unsettled by her, which is a textbook manifestation of how the psyche works. We are magnetically fascinated by people who openly live out the parts of ourselves we've pushed underground. Rounding out this portrait is an anxious attachment style. Alice has a structural need for external emotional support. She finds it nearly unbearable to release the past or to sit with an uncertain future. But the central lesson of her arc is this: gaining freedom is not the same thing as knowing what to do with it. You can leave a relationship and still be trapped inside your own terror of inner emptiness. At first glance, Robin looks like the embodiment of total, uncompromising independence, the freest person in the entire story. She's entirely detached from romantic relationships, couldn't care less about social approval, lives exactly as she pleases, and bends herself to no one. But look more closely at her behavior, and something else comes into focus. Psychologically, Robin's lifestyle isn't a story about freedom at all. It's a story about comprehensive avoidance. Robin keeps herself in a state of near constant, almost aggressive stimulation. Alcohol, endless parties, casual sex, loud music, crowds, perpetual motion, she needs all of it like oxygen. She almost never allows herself to go quiet. And here the film illustrates one of its sharpest paradoxes. Hypersociality and the eternal party can function as an extraordinarily effective defense against the terrifying experience of being alone with yourself. Returning to the Jungian lens, we find a perfect contrast. Where Alice diligently suppresses her impulsiveness and her shadow aggression, Robin suppresses her vulnerability with equal ruthlessness. She plays the role of the invulnerable trickster, the person who genuinely needs no one, with consummate skill. But it's precisely this armor that makes her inner loneliness feel like the most tragic of the film. Behind the relentless energy and the laughter is a vast, chilling distance from herself. On an existential level, Robin is trying to solve the problem of meaning through sheer intensity of experience. But the trap is that intensity is not the same as intimacy. You can run 1,000 people through your life, accumulate 1,000 vivid nights, and still feel nothing that reaches any real depth. Alice and Robin are perfect mirror opposites along the same spectrum. Alice is terrified of being without a relationship, and Robin is terrified, to the point of physical revulsion, that a relationship would annihilate her freedom. But at their core, both women are running from the same thing, the unbearable prospect of meeting their own vulnerability. Meg is the character in whom a great many contemporary women recognize themselves with unsettling precision. Her survival strategy in the city is total rationalization. She has tried to turn virtually everything into a measurable, predictable project. Her career, her body, her schedule, and eventually motherhood itself. For Meg, having a child isn't an act born of feeling. It's a planned milestone she wants to complete on her own terms, eliminating the unreliable variable of a man from the equation. Through Meg's arc, the film exposes the enormous pressure of the social environment. Today's women are asked to do something impossible: be professionally accomplished, financially independent, and impeccably presented, while also fulfilling a maternal instinct, which, as a biological imperative, doesn't actually exist. The result is that Meg has come to experience her own life not as something to be lived, but as a resource to be optimized. She's afraid of failing, afraid of appearing weak, and control has become the only mechanism by which she can hold herself together. Meg is not a cold careerist. She's simply trying to keep her hands on the wheel in a culture that holds women responsible for everything. Her hyper-rationality is a powerful defense mechanism against the terrifying open-endedness of life. She wants to make decisions under sterile conditions, without the emotional chaos that other people inevitably bring with them. But Meg's psychological trap is that control is only ever an illusion of safety. In trying to calculate life down to its finest detail, she cuts herself off from the ability to actually taste it. The film quietly leads us to a simple but hard-won insight. No matter how skillfully you build your barricades out of schedules and plans, life will find a way to bring its chaos crashing through, in Meg's case, through Ken's arrival, forcing you to admit that genuine closeness only begins where calculation ends. Tom is one of the film's most telling characters precisely because he appears, on the surface, so completely relaxed and well-adjusted. He's charming, easy to connect with, and gives every impression of someone who has mastered the art of city life. But psychologically, his arc isn't about freedom. It's about the virtuosic avoidance of depth through constant lateral movement. Tom isn't afraid of people. He's afraid of the gravity that inevitably sets in when you let yourself pause. In attachment theory terms, Tom displays a modern, polished form of avoidant attachment. He isn't the closed-off introvert retreating into a shell. He's the highly social person who uses surface-level intensity as a substitute for genuine connection. He's brilliant at generating chemistry and the sensation of instant emotional rapport. But the moment a relationship starts requiring real accountability and genuine presence, he slips away with practiced ease. Closeness, for him, is only appealing as long as it remains emotionally non-binding. The endless flirtation and the revolving door of new encounters are, at bottom, a way of never having to risk anything, never becoming dependent on anyone, and never having to face his own vulnerability. On an existential level, Tom is trying to quiet an inner emptiness through constant confirmation that he is desired. While new women and fresh sexual interest remain in his orbit, he feels alive. But the problem is that this intensity generates no meaning. It only temporarily dials down the anxiety. The film is precise in showing how effortlessly contemporary culture packages this kind of emotional flight as an attractive lifestyle and a philosophy of personal freedom. In Jungian terms, Tom functions as a shadow figure for Alice. He lives exactly the way that both terrifies and fascinates her, without control, without a legible future, following impulse and pleasure. Yet Tom himself represses his own opposite with equal ferocity, his deep need for stability and his fear of real loneliness. In the end, his freedom reads not as conscious maturity, but as an endless marathon whose only purpose is to keep moving, so he never has to stop and encounter the silence of his own apartment. Lucy is the character who pushes the idea of rationalizing love to its absolute limit. In a world that feels chaotic and unpredictable, she has chosen the strategy of mathematical modeling. For her, finding a partner isn't an emotional process, it's data work. She genuinely believes that if she builds the right algorithm and sets the right compatibility filters, a guaranteed optimal outcome will follow. From a cognitive psychology standpoint, Lucy's behavior is an attempt to eliminate uncertainty from the equation of intimacy entirely. Her logic is clean. If I calculate all the parameters and verify compatibility up front, I can insure myself against future pain. But the tragedy of her character is that love simply doesn't function like a spreadsheet. By trying to digitize feeling, she misses the entire point of living contact, turning every date into an endless job interview. On an existential level, this kind of obsessive systematizing is a formidable defense against the chaos of life. Control, for Lucy, is the only way to avoid colliding with a massive underlying anxiety. Behind her tables and diagrams is a terror of a world where no one guarantees anything. She's afraid of being swept away by feeling for the wrong person, so she tries to build a reliable security system out of numbers and facts, a firewall around her heart. Through a Jungian lens, Lucy has pushed everything irrational deep into her shadow. Spontaneity, chaos, pure embodiment, unpredictable impulse. She lives entirely in her head, trying to sever herself from anything that can't be explained by logic. But the psyche is stubborn. The harder we suppress chaos, the more violently it eventually breaks through. Lucy's arc is a journey from the illusion of total control to the recognition that life is far wider than any model, and that sometimes the most important things happen precisely where the algorithm fails. The way the characters interact in this film resembles a living ecosystem, each person helping the others see their blind spots, usually without meaning to. The ending doesn't try to heal anyone, but it gives each character a chance to step outside their habitual script. The turning point between Alice and Robin comes after the birthday disaster. Crucially, it's Alice who reaches out first. She acknowledges that Robin was right. She really had been dissolving into every person she met, using men as a substitute for a self. But this reconciliation doesn't mean Robin has changed. What it means is that Alice chooses to keep Robin in her life as exactly what she is, a vivid, living embodiment of Alice's own shadow. She still needs to be able to observe that wild, uncontained part of herself that her friend represents. But now, she does it from a different distance. And only after this internal admission does she set off on her first solo hiking trip, a symbol that she is finally ready to meet the dawn of her own life without someone else there to witness it. For Meg, the ending is a story about accepting life in all its unpredictability. The woman who spent so long behind barricades of schedules and plans chooses vulnerability. She lets herself enter a relationship with a younger man, not because she needs rescuing, but because she has finally given herself permission not only to manage, but to simply feel. She discovers that motherhood isn't just a project, but a reservoir of warmth that doesn't have to be navigated alone. Lucy and Tom both arrive somewhere real, if differently. Lucy, who tried to algorithmize love through dating site filters, finds happiness in the most straightforward and unplanned of connections. We see her in the final scene genuinely joyful, receiving a proposal, not because of her tables, but almost in spite of them. Tom, having come face to face with the fact that his lightness cost him something genuinely valuable, pauses for the first time. His ending is a beginning, the start of a path toward real attachment, as he stops running and starts recognizing what stable, sustained connection is actually worth. Each character ultimately finds their own balance between being with someone and being themselves. It turns out that when you stop using the people around you as anesthesia against inner silence, life stops feeling like a battle and starts being something you can actually enjoy. The film slowly walks us toward an uncomfortable, almost unsettling conclusion. Contemporary people have become genuinely obsessed with the concept of freedom. We demand freedom of choice, freedom from commitment, freedom from emotional dependency, and above all, freedom from pain. But the paradox is that this kind of absolute, hermetically sealed freedom far too often turns out to be just another form of total isolation. Throughout the story, we watch characters desperately chasing whatever is available: new relationships, sex, intense experiences, perfectly calibrated life scripts. But behind all that relentless motion is a single shared fact. Almost none of them can sustain honest, unmediated contact with themselves. To be alone with yourself, without the saving distraction, without the constant external validation, without a watching eye to tell you that you matter, turns out to be the most unbearable task of all. Which is why the film's real question has nothing to do with practical advice on single life. This is a story that asks something far deeper and more existential. What is actually left of a person when every last escape route from their own inner emptiness has been closed off? That's where we'll leave it for today. As always, this channel is a shared space for thinking things through, where we take apart the films we love and come to know ourselves a little better in the process. If this reading of How to Be Single resonated with you, or if you recognized yourself in any of these characters, hit like. It genuinely helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you're new here and drop a comment. Whose flavor of escape feels most familiar to you? Have you ever gone full Robin, total chaos, no looking back, or are you more of a Meg, keeping everything locked down and under control? Don't be afraid to sit with the silence. See you in the next one.